Hey everyone, it's Alan Schimmel. You're watching TechStrong TV on the Digital Anarchist Network. And welcome to Thursday, April 9th. We've got a good show for you lined up, a nice broadcast, chock full of mostly new stuff, but a few oldies but goodies as well. We continue in this COVID-19 cycle, but I think we're all kind of adjusting to a new normal a little bit. I see it from the views actually on the media ops site. I mean, Security Boulevard has gone wild over the last couple of weeks with COVID, and it's now settled into I'm going to say up almost 50 or 60% in views daily, which I think has a lot more to do with the cybersecurity implications of everyone working from home, using Zoom, etc. But DevOps and DevOps.com and Container Journal Hey everyone, it's Alan Schimmel. You're watching TechStrong TV on the Digital Anarchist Network. And welcome to Thursday, April 9th. We've got a good show for you lined up, a nice broadcast, chock full of mostly new stuff, but a few oldies but goodies as well. We're at this now. I think this is the 9th TechStrong TV episode that we've put out, and I hope you're finding it useful, interesting, helping you get past the time. We continue in this COVID-19 cycle, but I think we're all kind of adjusting to a new normal a little bit. I see it from the views actually on the media ops site. I mean, Security Boulevard has gone wild over the last couple of weeks with COVID, and it's now settled into I'm going to say up almost 50 or 60% in views daily, which I think has a lot more to do with the cybersecurity implications of everyone working from home, using Zoom, etc. But DevOps and DevOps.com and Container Journal, after having like a momentary dip early last week, have come back to kind of the high levels they were at prior to all of this. So I think people are getting back into their routines, albeit from maybe home rather than an office or what have you. But I think, we're getting back, and we're realizing, look, business doesn't stop. We're home. There are certain businesses, obviously restaurants, bars, and stuff like this that, we want to support and order in as much as we can. But for much of the country, and here in the U.S. anyway, we are probably the next 2 weeks are our peak weeks, unless you happen to be in, like, let's say the New York area where they seem to be hopefully peaking now, and then we'll see it decline, and it can't decline fast enough. I will tell you that, today is the first day of the Jewish holiday of Passover. Last night was the first Seder, as they call it. And never has the word Passover really meant so much to me as it has this year. And my hope as we start today is that, this plague, because it is a plague, passes over you and yours as well. And with that, let's jump into our show today. Let me tell you what we have lined up. Number one, I have a great interview I just did with Robert Reeves, who's the CTO at Datical, folks behind Liquibase, and Robert and the whole Datical team have gone remote, and I don't think they're going back. He's going to talk about that, but more importantly, Robert's going to talk about how DevOps enabled organizations, and it's not, I think, just DevOps, but I think it's the whole agile, nimble, DevOps way of doing things has enabled, these high performing IT organizations to once again come out ahead in this new reality. And so we'll jump into that with Robert. After that, we've got a little bit of an older one I wanted to show you. And that is, well, it's not that old. It's from this past RSA, the end of February. It was an interview that was with myself, Mitchell Ashley of Accelerated Strategies Group, and an old friend of ours. Well, she's not old, but we've been friends a long time. Michelle McLean. Michelle is VP over at StackRock's Cloud Native Security Kubernetes security specialist. And Michelle Mitchell and I had a really good conversation. You want to call it Shadow Kubernetes, Shadow Cloud Native, whatever, but really on kind of the state of cloud native security. And I think you'll enjoy that conversation. Then we have another interview with a company we haven't interviewed before that I think is new to our audience, and that's called Better Cloud. I interviewed Jim Brennan, who's their Chief Product Officer. And Better Cloud is really the folks behind a new term that I just heard, but I love it. It's called SaaSops, right? And it's the idea that, and this fits right into our IT as code. I'm going to talk about it before we run Jim's thing. But it's part of this IT as code where the IT folks, the IT generalists, who used to be responsible for maintaining those applications in the server closet on-prem, are now tasked with maintaining these SaaS applications. Well, not actually maintaining that, but maintaining the access to them and the availability of them and what's in there. So it's SaaS ops, and security is a big part of that as well. We'll talk about that. I think then we're going to turn things over to the one and only Charlene O'Hanlon. And Charlene has a good interview with Carmen Diardo of TaskTop. Carmen was at Nationwide a long time. He's a real DevOps pioneer, in addition to being a huge Pittsburgh Steelers fan. One of the good people in the industry. And Charlene's going to be talking with Carmen. Again, dealing with the work from home stuff and probably in the context of product or project to product, which is a big theme over at TaskTop. I think you'll enjoy that. After Charlene, we're going to head on over to the analyst corner, where Mitchell Ashley is once again doing his thing. Mitchell's been doing some great interviews, by the way. If you haven't caught him, go back and watch some of our previous. Mitchell does at least one almost every day. In today's interview, Mitchell's going to talk with Carol Ross, a leadership coach and founder of Emotionally Fit Leaders. And it's about coaching executive leaders. And obviously it's a good time right now for some leaders to get some coaching, because I see it here in even media ops as the CEO. Team looks to me and I need to set a tone, a course, an emotional level that is realistic, but not, you don't want to be blowing smoke up people's butts and telling them things that aren't true either. I think we get enough of that on the mainstream real news. Anyway, so Mitchell has a great interview there. And then, it's a Thursday, and we're going to head over to the king of the channels, Mike Vizard, for his channel roundup. And Mike's been doing also some great channel roundups. If you haven't had a chance, go back on some of the old shows and check out what Mike's giving, some really just laying it down advice on what you should be doing if you're a channel player in this environment. And then we'll wrap things up. So should be an excellent Thursday. I hope you enjoy it. We're going to take a quick commercial break and we'll be right back.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
Okay, back here at TechStrong TV studios. You know, before I introduce Robert Reeves and Datical, the folks behind Liquidbase, I wanted to mention two things. Number one, TechStrong Con is coming June 4th. I think you could already early bird register. Well, there's no fee to attend, but you could already register if you go to techstrongcon.com. Speakers are being added. We'll probably be doing a full announcement. I'm going to say next Monday will be the full announcement. So check out techstrongcon.com. John Willis is in charge of speakers there, and we've got some really good speakers and really good topics. The other thing I wanted to mention is our Slack channel is up, and we'd love to interact. John was on there all day yesterday after his great presentation, and a lot of the people we're going to be interviewing will be on the Slack channel, as well as the Media Ops DevOps team here at TechStrong TV. So if you go to techstrong.tv, you can just fill in your email address. It fires you off. It's an automated script. It fires you off a invitation to the Slack channel. You won't be getting any mails or mailing list crap from this, but you'll be on this channel and you'll be able to interact, and we'd love to hear from you. So please check out techstrong.tv, join the Slack channel. It'd be a great thing. All right, that being said, let's get to our first interview. So as I mentioned, Robert Reeves is a friend in his Big Lebowski sweater, as usual, from home in South Austin, Texas, talking to us about how high-performing IT organizations and DevOps-enabled organizations seem to be faring, or at least are better situated to survive and even thrive in this new environment we find ourselves in, and including Datical itself, which, as Robert indicates, they may never go back to an office. This working from home may become the new normal for them going forward. So let's now go over to my interview with my good friend Robert Reeves, CTO, co-founder of Datical.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, it's Alan Schimmel for DevOps.com, and we are on TechStrong TV on the Digital Anarchist Network. And we've got a great interview today. It's my friend, the dude from South Austin, Robert Reeves, CTO, co-founder at Datical. Robert, welcome.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, no, it's really our pleasure, Rob. You know, I wish we've done so many interviews over the years, Robert, and we've laughed and we've kidded around and had some good times, while also discussing some really good DevOps, database, Liquidbase kind of angles. And of course, this one is a little different. First of all, it's good to see you healthy and pink. But so, Robert, it's a little bit surreal for all of us. I'm in the office, but I only have, one or two folks in our whole office. You're obviously working from home with quite a get up there that maybe we'll spend some time in a little bit. Let's get the stuff out of the way, then we'll dive into what we see behind you. But how are things at Datical?
Well, they're going well. I mean, we had to shift as a company. We had an office. Now we don't. But something really interesting has happened there. Over we've been doing this for 3-4 weeks now. And we started looking at how we're performing as a company. Obviously, a company like Datical is going to be data-driven. And so we looked at how the teams are doing. How is sales? How is engineering? How's our support and customer success teams? And it turns out that all those KPIs, those key performance indicators, are up. I mean, go figure, a DevOps company like Datical would be paying attention to those things. Uh-huh. It's certainly been a lot of fun for us, at the Reeves house, doing homework and those sorts of things. The big thing that we got this week is one of those chroma green screen bodysuits for myself and the little guy. We can't wait to try those out.
Well, I know we could do it on TechStrong TV. Maybe we could have a Reeves family segment. Yeah, that'll work. But Rob, you bring up a good point about DevOps and DevOps companies being prepared. There's a saying, right? I think you're the one who told it to me. The time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. And in the case of DevOps, maybe it wasn't 20 years ago. Maybe it was 4 years ago, 5 years ago, or 3 years ago. But we're certainly seeing the adage that high-performing IT teams that have embraced Agile and DevOps and Lean and these kinds of things, are better prepared to deal with situations like we're dealing with now. And though all things being equal, you'd like to see those high-performing IT teams be more profitable. But right now, we're not it's not the profits as much as it's survival, right? And we need people doing it.
Well, look, we all love big trees, but it takes a while for them to get built. And the best time to plant it was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. And so we've certainly seen companies, even with the coronavirus and just the shock that's done to the markets, actually do some good out of this. I think a good example of that is Bank of America. They were one of the first, if not the first bank, to offer loans, the Payroll Protection Program. Loans, PPP loans, to their customers. And so how were they able to do that? Well, Bank of America over the past several years has made investments in DevOps. I certainly know that a number of years ago, they did a value stream map to see where their inefficiencies were, and they fixed where those inefficiencies were, lather, rinse, repeat. And so they were able, I don't think it's a coincidence that because they did their homework, several years ago, a few years ago, that they were prepared to take advantage of this. Meanwhile, other folks that really didn't invest in DevOps at that time are struggling. And you've got loan officers, you've got customers of those banks that are not able to offer those PPP loans. And that's a shame. It's heartbreaking. That we were able to get the U.S. Congress and the president were able to get that through, get that signed, but getting that last mile. So companies that invest in DevOps were able to do that. And this is the reason why. Now, I'm not saying build a time machine, but I am saying that, you can do this today. And this is an opportunity to improve because at some point we're going to end this crisis. And companies need to be prepared to take advantage of it.
Absolutely. Again, I think it was you who told me that if you didn't plant a tree 20 years ago, the second best time to plant a tree? Today. Right now, exactly. But I would just point out one fallacy to you, my friend, and that is trees are grown, they're not built. And much like DevOps teams are, right? We grow them. You can't just kind of build them like with a construction set or something like that. And
for example, at Datical, you could use our Datical products. You could use our liquid-based products, but you got to use them. It's a gym membership. Just because you signed up
doesn't mean you're in shape. Hey, I'm living proof, brother. So, Robert, you mentioned liquid base, and this is a topic I met with Dion. Is it Dion Cornett or Cornell, the new president over at Datical? I interviewed him when he first came on before all this craziness came about. And, we had a good long chat about liquid base and just, I guess I didn't realize how pervasive it is in the market as an open source tool like that.
Well, it's, I just looked at the new updated metrics, download metrics today from last month. And it is 16 million downloads over the past 12 calendar months.
That's great.
It is increasing at an increasing rate. So what we're starting to see is companies are adopting DevOps. They have been adopting it. And you want to solve the first problem, the application, the lowercase a of your application stack, the compiled bits. And a lot of customers have options. Certainly you can use Liquibase open source, our open source product. And you can use that to, at the developer's workstation, automate your database schema change. If you are trying to put this into your existing application release automation, application release orchestration, you could use Liquibase Pro. Of course, if you're trying to support 10,000 developers, you are trying to move from the data center to the cloud, you might need something like Datical or Liquibase Enterprise. And that's where we are. I mean, we're trying to help customers, regardless of where they are in the organization or on that life cycle, to just eliminate this database problem that they have in DevOps. That's what we do.
Absolutely. I don't know if our audience out there really kind of put this all together, though, and so that's good that we're kind of shining a light on that. You know, Rob, you mentioned when things get back to normal or to the new normal. Let's look beyond the next, whether it's 3 weeks or 6 weeks or 10 weeks, whatever it is, this will end. Right, we will either have some sort of medicine, some vaccine, or flatten the curve where we go to a new normal. What do you think that new normal means, especially in the IT industry?
Well, it means immediacy. At Datical, we were able to very quickly move to a work from home style of work. All right, we were able to do that. Not everybody's able to do that. Like, for example, there are organizations that are still having their employees come into the office and putting their health at risk, and frankly, the health of their family as well, because if they get infected and bring it home to somebody who's immunocompromised or elderly or something like that, that's bad. Well, the reason why they have that is because they don't have the software in place to manage things like secure data and those sorts of things. So you're certainly going to see, I think, networks are going to go away from this VPN. We've got servers in the office to figuring out, well, how do we remotely connect to these applications so people can do their job and do it in a way that, they do not have to be physically located. Of course, we've had VPNs for a while. But how do we manage, that with maybe two-factor authentication and those sorts of things? That means better software. And this goes back to what Mark Andreessen said, what is it, 15 years now? That Wall Street Journal op-ed, software will eat the world. It's truer today than it was back then.
Yep.
And so I think companies, the ones that are able to turn on a dime, that are able to take care of their customers, certainly take care of their employees, are going to be the ones to succeed. And you don't just hang around and wait for it to happen. You've got to put in the work. It's hard. It's difficult. But it is worth it.
Absolutely. Rob, so I'm going to take a slightly different tack, if you may, and I'll throw it by and see what you think. I think VPNs are history, to tell you the truth. I think they're kind of an outmoded way of we do. They're good when you're traveling internationally and they don't let you watch Amazon or Netflix. But other than that, I mean, as a means to nail it down, because we don't have the moat and perimeter anymore like that, the moat and castle kind of thing that they were designed to protect for. But I think, the same way it's taking a lot of companies because of inertia or technical cultural debt to switch from a come-to-work footing to a work-at-home footing, you're not just going to flip a switch and say, okay, everyone, come back to the office. I don't think it's going to work like that. I think it's going to be hard. You're done. Yeah.
I mean, looking at the metrics, it's like, and there's another problem here, and that is that pointy-haired boss from Dilbert who wants to see people around. This person that is, I've got to see bodies. I want to make sure they're working. The kind of people that are investigating, software to, frankly, spy on their employees to make sure they're working.
I've seen a lot of this too.
Are you kidding me? Do you have that little trust in your employees, or are you just looking at the wrong KPIs, the wrong metrics, the wrong outcomes? And I think this is very much a DevOps issue because, Dr. Forsgren, all that research that she has done in her team on what are the key performance indicators. And with her, what is it, a decade of research now? She found out that there's four. There's 4 KPIs and everything else is noise. Well, I think managers are looking at the wrong thing. They're looking at things like, have I seen people? Is the volume up in the office? Do I feel energy? It's like, what the hell is that? I mean, it's like for a sales team, are we making calls? Are we creating opportunities? Are we servicing our prospects, turning them into customers? For development, it's, are we releasing to production? Are we successful when we do so? Are we shortening the time? I mean, these are the metrics people need to focus on, not if people are just looking at their screen. I mean, frankly, it's bullshit. And a lot of people... No,
it is.
Yeah.
I mean, I realized this because my story. I did venture-backed startups for 20, 25 years. And then I started media ops, and I wanted to stay away from all that stuff. But one of the things that I really kind of told myself was I did not want to be a babysitter. If I got to hire people that I don't trust, I may hire people who may not be A players in terms of their work product. But if I got to worry about them whether or not they're working or not, then I made a really bad hire and I shouldn't bother, right? And I think that's the thing. But I think, look, you want to know the truth, we're somewhat jaded and spoiled, you and I, Robert. We work in tech. And in tech, it's not easy hiring people, right? And when you get someone, you pay them a lot of money, but generally they're producers, right? Whatever it is that their job is, they do their job. There's a lot of companies. I see it here in Florida, God bless Florida. But,
Truly.
They're still moaning and groaning that the beaches are closed.
I know. Bless their heart.
There's a lot of people here, frankly, who don't work in tech, who work in other industries, tourist-related or what have you. And a lot of them work hard. They work 2 and 3 jobs, but a lot of them don't. And it's going to be a different world. I think it's not going to be this V thing that some talk about. It's not going to be snap your fingers and we turn the clock back to February. We didn't turn the clock back quickly after 2008. We didn't turn the clock back after the .com bubble burst either. It was a very different tech world after that. I think it's going to be a very different world in general now after this.
Well, absolutely. Now, realize, look, I've gone through quite a few. So I get to say this, my daddy's in oil and gas. Okay. So we've been through several
boom and bust
oil downturns, several busts. Certainly the savings and loan crisis, really impacted Texas. And I do remember that. And I lived through the .com bust, but then that was shortly followed by 9/11. The thing that I have seen is that these incidents are certainly a crucible. And my heart does go out to the folks that are in industries that are disproportionately
really
affected by this. Yep. It's sad. What we can do in technology is we can do our best to focus on solutions that can, one, help our employees and our coworkers help our customers, and certainly create environments where those folks can be brought in. You do not have to be a super technical person to work at a tech company.
No.
There are plenty of opportunities, and I think that personal touch is really valuable, and that's what they can offer. But I also think that the sooner that financial services, insurance companies, anything that is really driven by software today gets up and running as quickly as possible so that we can help the greater economy. Because there is that multiplier effect where, you know, a dollar that is paid to me as a tech employee, I'm going to spend that dollar.
Probably $1.20 for every dollar. Yeah.
And so we need to work on that. And this is an opportunity. I do believe that this is also a great opportunity for those folks that find themselves out of work, that have found themselves laid off. This is the best time to start a company. Everything is cheaper. You got time now. You don't have a lot of other competitors entering the market. Remember, you know, didn't Airbnb start during the last recession? I seem to
No
recall
doubt.
that.
Yeah, no. A downturn is always the best time to start a new company and ride it up. I started Still Secure in October of 2001, November 2001. So I know all about that. And Media Ops, quite frankly, had it when I left Still Secure in 2008 or 9. Is when I started, you know, what became Media Ops, though we didn't actually do that till 2012, 13. But the other thing is it's not just, you know, it's like old growth, new growth forest, right? Back to your tree metaphor, right? It's a great time for the new growth, but it's also a time to prune dead branches and make the trees that are there healthier. And it's a time to try new things. I mean, what we're doing here with TechStrong TV is a perfect example. We've been moving towards video with Digital Anarchist for a year and a half, but this has given us an opportunity to do this every day. And it's an experiment. We'll see how it goes, but it
gives you an opportunity to have many experiments, and remember that's the DevOps way. All right. The reason why there's two reasons why we want to release software faster. One is for stability reasons. All right. So change is the enemy of stability. So if we have a lot of change, we have a lot of instability. So let's make that change smaller and more frequent. All right. So we can minimize the instability of that. All right. So that's good. All right. But also we want to be able to release more software faster so we can experiment. Let's say your batting average for new features is about 10%. So 1 out of 10 idea you have that you put in place that you experiment with is going to be just a total home run. Mm-hmm. Well, if you can only release once a quarter, that means you've got to wait at least 10 quarters, 30 months, all right,
to do anything.
At the longest to have a home run. What if you were able to release every day, and every 10 days you were able to get a home run? Well, you're going to win. And I think Dr. Forsgren's research proves that out.
Absolutely. Rob, we're about out of time, but you know what? One of the great things about what we've been doing with all these Zoom interviews is we actually get a real insight into people by getting a peek into their backgrounds, those who aren't using virtual backgrounds. So let's just take a minute or two here and peruse what we've got there behind you. We'll start with, well, it's my left, but it's probably your right. It looks like a Star Wars ACAC out there, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Cool.
From the greatest Star Wars movie, Empire Strikes Back.
Absolutely. On the ice planet Hoth, Hoth, right? What else do we got there? Go. I hear you. What else? Besides, it looks like a decent bar of liquor. What else do we have there, Rob?
Well, I think there was a period where I went and joined the circus during the .com bust, and on the AT-AT is my resume on a rope. Those are all the backstage passes from when I was a tour manager for a bunch of punk bands.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Very cool.
And then the football player you see that's Dandy Don Meredith, Cowboys. And turns
Let the
out,
fat lady sing. Go ahead.
well, Don Meredith is a family member of my wife's
Really?
family. And so his
Very
daughter
cool.
had asked for the wedding, well, what would you like? You know? And I said, we need signed photos from Don. And so we got hooked up. And then, of course,
Very
next
cool.
to that is, you know, and I'm 46 now. So I have that photo of Nolan Ryan beating the crap out of Robin Ventura. And he was about my age, still pitching for the Rangers.
It's still throwing 100 miles an hour, by the
Yeah.
way.
And then Robin charged the mound. He was his rookie year. He's in his 20s. And Nolan beat the crap out of him. And I like that. And of course, you know, the Legend of Zelda Shield, Captain Marvel. And
See that?
Booze.
Captain Marvel looks good. Captain Marvel looks good back there.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Interesting,
she is the
Rob.
strongest Avenger. I mean,
She, no doubt. Well, she saved us.
well, yeah, exactly. Well, Tony, Steve, and Thor, they needed some help, and she provided
It
it.
was her who came down.
Yep.
Let's not even go there. I am Iron Man. Anyway, Robert Reeves, it's been great catching up to you, my friend. Good luck with Datical and the Liquid-based teams, and just, you know, stay well and healthy through this, man. Let's come out the other side, and we'll do more interviews.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I do appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Robert Reeves, CTO co-founder at Datical, our guest here today on Digital Anarchist for TechStrong TV. Robert, we'll see you soon.
All right. Thank you.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
Okay, and we're back here at TechStrong TV. Great interview with Robert. Let's tee up our next interview. As I mentioned earlier in the opening, this interview is from RSA conference when we were on Broadcast Alley back in late February, and it features Mitchell Ashley, who, you know, is the CEO founder of Accelerated Strategies Group. But Mitchell and I were also two of the three co-founders of Still Secure, an information security company that out of Boulder, Colorado, that was founded, well, Lattice Networks was founded in the year 2000. Still Secure was a pivot off of it. And it was really led by my good friend Rajat Bhargava, who's now the CEO of JumpCloud. So Raj and Mitchell and I kind of launched Still Secure in 2001. We had IPS, intrusion prevention system, vulnerability management, VAM, vulnerability and access management control. And then we also launched a product called Safe Access, which was one of the first NACs, network access control products in the market. And at the time, NAC was a pretty hot market. One of the other companies had a brilliant woman handling a lot of their product and marketing functionality, and that was Michelle McLean. So I first met Michelle probably about 15 years ago. And though we were competitors, we always just hit it off well and had a great relationship. We've stayed in touch over the years. Michelle is now VP over at StackRock's Cloud Native Security, Kubernetes security experts. And Mitchell, of course, knew Michelle from the NAC days as well. So Mitchell, Michelle, and I had a chance to sit down at RSA conference this past February. And we talked a little bit about Shadow Kubernetes, Shadow Cloud Native, what's the state of the art in Kubernetes and Cloud Native security, and what is she seeing in her view over there, and what it means. It's a great conversation. I hope you'll enjoy it. Let's now go to Michelle McLean, Mitchell Ashley, and myself at RSA Conference 2020.
This is Digital Anarchist at RSA San Francisco 2020.
Hey everyone, it's Alan Schimmel for DevOps.com, Security Boulevard. We're live at RSA Conference right here in Moscone West on Broadcast Alley, as they call it, and we're in day 3 of our RSA coverage. This is actually an interview that when I saw it on my schedule, and I said, I want to do that one. But then Mitchell here wanted to do this one too. So
it's too small a space to wrestle, so we just bumped it.
So, and our guest was nice enough to allow us both to interview her. So, and actually,
I've been
truth
tormented
be told,
by both of you for almost the
truth
same
be
number
told,
of
our
years.
guest here we know for about, well, she was a baby at the time,
Yes,
but it was
absolutely.
about 15 years ago.
Just out of high school.
Yeah.
You know, so this is amazing.
This is Michelle McLean. Michelle is the CMO, VP Marketing. I don't know. She runs stuff over at StackRox. Michelle is a real security industry veteran who, you know, don't be fooled by the marketing title. She's a very, very technical engineer background kind of person who has seen this industry evolve as long as Mitchell and I have. So
Really have.
she just looks better for it than we do. But anyway,
A little more
Michelle, welcome.
road
Thank you. It's great to be with you guys again. And,
Yep.
here we are, day 3, almost over the
Almost over the
line.
hump.
Almost
So,
made it.
Michelle, I have a lot that I want to talk about with you, but I wanted to just kind of do a level set because we have both I have my DevOps.com, my Security Boulevard,
Sure.
and our Container Journal audience. You play right into the middle of all that, but maybe some folks aren't familiar yet with StackRox.
Yeah.
So let's do that first.
Okay.
Lay it out for
Sure,
us.
absolutely. So StackRox is focused on securing containers in Kubernetes. And you're absolutely right, it's right in that mix. And one of the things that we take really seriously in our platform is how to enable these, what had been pretty distinct groups, if you were a big enough organization, to work together a lot more effectively. Obviously, this cloud native stack completely upends how we do security. And a lot of the old, I mean, the main mission doesn't change, right? Keep the bad guy out and
Right.
find him and stop him if he does get in, but how you're going to do it is really different. And pace is part of why that's so different, and how much you can do in the infrastructure is really different. And so at StackRox, what we do is tie very deeply into the infrastructure, particularly Kubernetes,
Yep.
to pull a lot of rich information, right? We call it declarative information, declarative data. We can pull that to know so much about the environment, more about the environment we've ever known before, to build the most secure apps we've ever built before, as long as we pull that context and then use the infrastructure itself to drive enforcement. And so that's how StackRox approaches securing containers and kube across build, deploy, and runtime.
So let me just first of all say that at a time when most people who consider themselves container security companies are obsessed with scanning secure containers for vulnerabilities, which to me is very much different than scanning nodes for vulnerabilities that we were doing 15 years
the
ago.
outside looking in.
Yeah. You know, you guys are taking a very different approach. You're actually pulling out the declarative information. Much like in NAC, remember we were able to pull that data out of endpoints.
You could make a much more finessed
Exactly.
appraisal of
a scalpel rather than a
Yes,
shotgun.
yes.
So there's that approach. Another thing though is, you mentioned how this whole cloud native new stack, whatever you want to call it, is upending security. It's upending IT in general, right? One of the terms I've been using this week is the multiverse of IT today. It was so much simpler back then, right? You had your perimeter, you had your router, your firewall, maybe an IPS or a UTM.
And each of those was a job, right?
Yep, and
each of those was a job
simple
description,
job.
a box and a job.
And then we went in, and then you had some IPSs inside your core. You had some endpoint security, and it was all good. You had a server closet. Maybe you had a data center. Then we moved to, I kept my stuff at a third-party data center, right? The rack spaces of the world and so forth. Then all of a sudden, well, maybe I'm going to move it to a cloud, and I had a choice of a private cloud. Do I put my private cloud on-prem, off-prem? Do I go to a public cloud? Well, now today, which public cloud do I use? I use all 3 public clouds. And now, let's make a game changer here. I'm getting rid of the hypervisor, or I'm building on top of the hypervisor, or I'm on bare metal with Kube and Cloud Native and this whole new stack. I just turned this on my head. Oh, and by the way, I want you to secure all that.
Right. Right.
All of this. I
Exactly.
want it all secure
Yeah.
now. And so, is it an impossible task? Maybe.
Well, I think there's a couple of things at play here that are interesting. I think as an industry, when we went through this big sea change in mentality of like, oh, the cloud is way too risky, like that'll never work. You cannot trust that. And then it became, actually the cloud's more secure because they have way more investment that they can make in security than any single individual company can do. And so I think we went through that wave. And we're seeing this next evolution where people are almost over-relying on the cloud. Well, I'm running it in, like, for instance, in the Kubernetes world, you can use a managed kube service. So you could use Google Kubernetes Engine, GKE on GCP, or you could use EKS, Elastic Kubernetes Service on AWS. And so we'll see this, they've put so much trust in the cloud now that they're like, well, but I don't need to do anything because I'm running in EKS, so Amazon's solving it for me.
Yeah, right.
And we just had Google on a webinar a week ago, and the guy's like, so, remember that shared responsibility model? Like, you still have a role to play. That's on you, Mr. Customer.
Right.
And I think that's been overlooked a little bit as people rush to embrace. There's lots of advantages
at
in
some
cloud.
point that pivot move, because there was this shared responsibility where ultimately you as the end user on that cloud, not the customer, but the end user who's renting space, and it was ultimately still your butt on the line.
Yeah.
You may ask them to do stuff for you, but when stuff hits the fan, you're the one who's responsible.
Well, there's also how it's assembled too, right? Because once you get into the application architecture layer of it, yes, it's a software architecture that's familiar, Kubernetes, containers, etc. But how that's constructed, API security, container security, microservices, across all of that, a service provider is going to know your app.
Well, and that's never been their domain.
Exactly.
Right?
No,
That's
and they
completely
would never
hardware.
claim to
That's
do
where
that.
exactly.
So
We've
that-
moved up how many layers the cloud guys are responsible for, but workload, app layer, always been your problem, and it doesn't change in containers and kube.
Exactly.
Not at all. So we've set the table, as we call it in the business. Boom. Now I want to move to the next thing. So full disclosure, this was all Michelle's idea. We spoke about it off camera, and I love it, and I think it's something we're going to explore more on a bunch of our sites across the board. But when we first moved to the cloud, one of the new things that popped up was this shadow IT
Completely.
kind of
This
thing.
stuff was getting done off on the
IT with
side.
the
So the
IT with a
developer
credit
would
card,
whip out his credit card, fire up a few instances, and throw up an application that the IT department didn't know about, the business department didn't know about, and oftentimes they didn't know about it till the stuff hit the fan with it, right? And we kind of got a handle on that with the cloud. And who I personally didn't think it would happen as quickly with like Kube and stuff, because quite frankly, Kube's harder. But it's not that hard for when you're a developer who's working in
Absolutely.
Kube. And so now we're having this same issue.
Yeah,
we're seeing its ugly head
we're
again.
seeing the emergence of the kind of this notion of shadow Kubernetes, and it's not that there's a lot of parallels, right? The developer side, the DevOps side, they fully know what's going on and they're in control. What's different is how much control they have, right? They have so much of the budget. They are driving innovation for the business. It is absolutely appropriate that they have the tools that they need to drive the innovation as fast as they can to drive the business forward, because that's how the business is going to win. But it really does put security in an awkward position. And I can't tell you how many times we've been on meetings where our intelligence says this company's on Kube. We send in our, master CTO for a great discussion with the CISO, and the CISO's like, wow, fascinating. You do cool stuff, and you're Kube native, and that's really interesting. And when we do Kube, we're totally going to call you when you do Kube. And then 3 hours later, he gets the message comes through on his iWatch. So it turns out we have some Kube clusters in prod, and I had no idea. So it's happening all over again.
So I got to tell, I suspected this because what happened was, so we were always surveying the audience. Do Are you currently using Kubernetes? Are you planning to use Kubernetes? Are you using it in just R&D test, or are you using it in prod? And every technology I've ever done these kind of surveys with, there's sort of a normal evolution pattern. With Kubernetes, it was stupid. It went from like, I'm thinking about using kube in prod. There was never that like a 45-degree slope or
Right,
whatever.
right.
No,
Prod is
this was
almost
like
synonymous
this
with
was like
kubes
an
in some way.
85-degree slope,
Yeah,
right?
and the time dimension
And
shrank.
crunched, right?
Yeah,
In one
totally.
year.
Yeah.
In 1 year, we were talking about something that's coming versus something that
Yeah.
steamrolled.
And we do a survey on a regular basis where we ask IT folks about all sorts of things about containers and kube, and part of it's adoption, and then part of it's like, what are you encountering? But we're always trying to gauge like really where they are on the journey. And in a single jump of the survey that had maybe an 8-month lag, it went from, if you looked at all the flavors of orchestrator that they could run, you said, okay, that's a flavor of kube, that's a flavor, OpenShift, GKE. So it was about 51%, one survey. The next survey was 86%.
That's exactly
That's
what.
huge.
And I've seen
Whoa.
similar stuff on a bunch, several surveys. No one. It went from. It skipped test. It like R&D. It skipped that whole. Let's figure it out.
Well,
to
and
just-
you don't have the lag you used to have, right? You don't have waterfall, so you don't build and wait and like test, and then we're going to figure out security, and then we're going to go live. It's like it's going, it's working. I know it's the same, right? That is the beauty of containers and kube, is this portability and parity between what you're doing in build and what you're doing in runtime, and because you can shorten that timeline, and because you have so much confidence that it will work and it will run because it's just porting over, why not flip the switch?
It's a radically different adoption curve when you really
crazy.
think about it.
Even if you go back, and we've all been around enough, right? If you remember when hypervisors first came out, right? There was like Zen open source hypervisor, and of course VMware, right? It
Box
was just a
and
little
bunch of
thing off
things, yeah.
EMC at the time, and I would say it had to be around 1999, 2000, 2001, and that like it was a plaything. And then by like 2003 or 4,
That is
it
my
was
Building your
dominant.
test
is my
Right,
data center
Microsoft
with
was
it, and
building
then
their
boom.
hypervisor
That's right.
and all of that crap. And Red Hat, KVR. So anyway, and I thought that was wildfire. 4 years, 4 years, 5 years at the most. I remember being at the second or third DockerCon in Austin 2 or 3 years ago, and I came back and I told the team, look, Google is Kube is like 0.9 release. They're going to do the 1.0 soon. I think this thing's going to get some legs.
might get some legs.
Yeah, this
Might
thing
get
has
some
some
legs.
legs.
And the challenge is, of
And that was
course,
the
on
last DockerCon people showed up to.
right, then they all started going to KubeCon. Yeah, and you got to feel for the security team, right?
Right.
They're just like dog paddling as fast as they can to
No,
try to keep up.
we're there in the
And-
multiverse like Doctor
yeah,
Who.
Yeah, exactly.
Trying
How
to
did this
figure-
happen?
And you're talking to the CISO and security team. What do you hear from security teams of their level of understanding Kube and security? And
Yeah.
that?
So
Are they beginning to go up that curve, that learning curve themselves? Or?
here's what's interesting. It's they need a translator. They know the way that things are supposed to be, and they have the right idea about some of the kinds of policies, but they're used to like using a hammer and then sitting on the outside of something and squashing something, right?
Kind of drawing
and that,
the line. This is how it is, and
right.
whatever bumps up against it will tell you if it's secure or not.
Yeah, and I'm inherently outside applying some sort of external control, and this infrastructure just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So they need to say, okay, this is what we need to do. How does one do that in a container world, in a kube world? Because they don't know the mechanism, right? Kube has a notion of admission controllers. If something doesn't fit a policy, it just doesn't get to deploy. So it's not like a security guy is going to say, we
don't
need
know
an
that.
admission controller policy for blah, 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 because they've never used that mechanism before. So they have the right ideas. They know what good hygiene looks like. They know what the protection needs to look like. They need the translator, the DevOps team, to map that to this is how you achieve that in this stack. And lots of companies are going through this transition, and the blending really needs to happen. So at StackRox, we spend a lot of energy thinking about how security teams, with all of their good know-how, how to make them effective in that world, because what they're going to do is put the guardrails in place, but developers are going to do it all, and they need to do it in a way that makes sense.
At some point, do they need some software skills themselves? Not to say they're going to be developers, but to really understand software architecture, the evolution of it.
I think they
You
need
can
to
help
know
them.
the capabilities. I don't know that they need to be
code.
into the coding,
gonna-
but they need to know like this is the mechanism. We used to do X. Now we're going to do Y because that's the mechanism that works in this world. They have to be conversant enough to do that because that's how they're going to have the stripes and get the credibility from the dev side.
So I'm going to tell
and
you,
put in place what makes sense.
maybe I'm a little cynical, a little bit. To me, if we live in a world of shadow cube, security people are Peter Pans and they can't find their shadow.
That was deep.
I'm cynical.
Hold on. I need to take a deep breath and kind of take that one in.
Because this is,
Yeah. Well,
you're asking them
to-
to play detective.
right.
You know,
Right. So
in a world they don't know.
and it's really an unfair ask. Like we
That's what I'm saying.
pull up our dashboard and one of our
You're
solutions
asking a boy
engineers
without a shadow to find the shadow.
So we pull up this, and one of our solutions engineers calls the dashboard. This is my oh crap! What did my developers do yesterday? Dashboard.
What did they do now?
Because they just you're never done. You never were done, but you're way worse never done now.
Absolutely.
And that's the first key. You can't control what you can't see. So first off, how do we find what's going on? And there's going to be a whole ton of things wrong. There always are. But security at the end of the day is all about risk management. So how do we tell them where to hunt first?
So now let me. That was Alan the cynic. Now let me give you Alan the glasses half full.
Okay.
There is an answer, and the answer is security can't do it alone.
Yeah.
We need to get these developers who are doing the shadow cube. We need to get the ops people who are aware of what's going on out there and seeing it. We need to make them part of the team. Security's their response, and they're fine.
Yes,
right?
they
This
don't
isn't
wanna do things
2005.
insecurely.
Right? No
Right.
one says,
They
"Oh, I
wanna be
want to
part of
have
the
an
team."
insecure app out here."
Right.
Right. We need to make them part of the team for two reasons. Number one, they give us the expertise that we don't have and the insight. Number two, if they know what the guardrails are supposed to be,
So
everybody's
everybody's out
life
there.
is easier.
And to get it now, right? Don't
Right.
find out later. I'm going to go build an
After the
image.
fact, right.
Tell me right now in Jenkins, for goodness sake, that I'm doing
Right.
something wrong. And
Or Jenkins X.
tell me what to and tell me
very
how to
good.
fix it and all
Yeah.
of that. So, I mean, when I talk about bridging the gap between security and DevOps, that's the kind of thing StackRox is super focused on. Like, give them a reason, tell them the rationale. Why is this a policy? What do you do to fix it?
Yep.
And then when you do that, you will succeed in this pipeline
I'm
process
just
that you're in.
wondering if we're going to see a StackRox with the white UI interface, and then a StackRox with the black UI interface. That's the Shadow Cube interface.
We already have dark mode, so
You
we're
already
way
have
ahead
dark
of you.
mode. Okay, so Shadow
but
Cube is already
It's
there.
the cool effect
All
where
right.
we're
Way
doing
behind.
a
it's
demo.
more than the interface, and I'm sure
I'm
you guys
kidding.
are
Yes,
doing
I
this.
know you are.
We're all being up here on
Yeah.
it, but there's truth in this kernel. No pun intended. But the fact of the matter is, if we want these developers and ops and DevOps folks to be part of the team, we need to give them a tool, StackRox, that isn't geared for the Uber security guy.
Right.
That's geared for someone who does get coops,
Yes.
who does understand this whole new stack, but is not necessarily a security professional.
And frankly, that person will have minimal knowledge that it's StackRox behind the scenes. They're not going to go
doesn't have
live
to.
in the StackRox
No.
UI.
Yeah.
Why should they?
Right, but
They should live in the pane of glass they're already living in. They should work in the workflows
Perfect.
they're already working in.
Amen.
We will have succeeded when we are kind of invisible, but have all these tendrils into all of the runbooks, the workflows, the tooling that they're already in. So what gets sent over to the SOC? What gets sent over to CI/CD? what you learn directly out of the
success.
StockRox UI.
So where are you
long
on
term
this?
does not matter. Oh, we have tons of integrations.
Launching this afternoon.
Integrations is the name of the game, because security has to work in a DevOps way. It has to be automated. It has to be fitting into the workflow. You can't have the human element. You'll never keep up. So yeah, we tie into CI/CD, we tie into SIMs, we tie into the SOC.
I think that's what we need to do. And we need to tie into their developer tools. We need to tie it into Git.
Yes.
We need to tie it into GitLab or whatever
GitHub.
it is they're using.
Absolutely.
GitHub in Microsoft's case.
Yep.
Jenkins, as you mentioned. I mean, there's a relatively stable tool set that the folks are using.
Same with secrets management. These guys have been dealing with secrets management for a long time. We're not going to reinvent the wheel and do that. So we tie into their secrets management.
Yep.
But could they be moving fast and make some sort of error? They could. So let's flag that for them. Like, why make humans go find these problems?
Absolutely.
Tooling can find these problems.
I think that's an easier problem to solve than your notion of, and I'm not blaming you that it's a bad idea, but thinking that, security is code, or that security people need to code. Yeah, they're going to learn to do some scripting, and a lot of them do. But the problem lies here at the dev level, right? The security people are almost by definition almost the observers in this universe.
I think, just to clarify, my view is that security personnel need to kind of take away the hands-off approach to software architecture. And just like you were talking about people working together, you were too, is, hey, sessions about software architecture and how does Kube work, right? With the security team. They're not going to be software people, they want to be. But go through that learning. Okay, let's talk about security. Why are the guardrails? How do we do that more effectively? Why is that in place? Oh, this is what happens with all that compliance reporting. So it's really just expanding the knowledge base of both teams.
Why is this the best
with
practice?
The other discipline. I think that's going to help.
Absolutely.
Great, let's go automate that. Now I
Yes.
get why that's an issue. You keep asking me about that or whatever it is.
Exactly.
Then we can work together effectively, not just because we're sitting side by side, our disciplines will work better
And there
together.
won't be one answer. Different companies will prioritize different things.
Agreed.
Different things will present a different level of risk. And so, we have dozens and dozens of policies that we've gleaned from customers, from best practices, from, benchmarks and standards that we do out of the box just to flag the big stuff that we've seen over and over again, that our customers are like, hey, we wrote a policy for this. You should build that into your product. Okay, yeah, that's a good one. We'll build that in. So find the stuff, find it in minutes, and then what matters to you? So don't break anything, right? First, do no harm.
Right.
So we alert on everything out of the box. We don't block anything. But then you decide as a business, yes, this really matters, and we're going to set it here or here. We're going to modify the policy this way to look for this other attribute and set and tie into this system. Fine, cool. You've at least got a universe of stuff to go off of that tells you where to find your biggest problems.
Not only a universe of stuff, a map of the universe of stuff.
Indeed.
And that's really
Indeed.
what I think it really. You don't have to be a Kubernetes expert to be a Kubernetes security guy, but you kind of have some. You got to understand
some fundamentals. Just a fundamental.
You got to know the map. You got to be able to
Deployment
read
is
the
what
map of
matters,
it.
right? We think in clusters. We don't think in containers
Agreed.
anymore. Things like
Excellent. This is, and by the way, what we just talked about. I don't know how long this went on. I'm sure it's overtime. Yeah, we're way overtime. They're telling me. Okay, but what we just spoke about is at the heart of DevSecOps.
Yeah.
Yeah,
right?
it is.
When
It
we
is
talk about
a value point.
DevSecOps and why it could be a game changer kind of thing, that's what it's
This is
about.
the way it needs to happen.
It's the only way.
Automated, etc.
Michelle, thank you so
Absolutely.
much.
Good
Pleasure
to be
having
with
you here, my
Thank
friend.
you, Mitchell.
See you again.
Good to be with you.
So, Shadow Kubernetes, you heard it here from StackRox. We're going to follow up on that on both DevOps.com and Security Boulevard. I think Michelle's going to help us with it.
Absolutely.
And so stay tuned for more of that. But for now, we're gonna wrap this one up. This is Alan Schimmel, Mitchell Ashley, and Michelle McLean live at RSA conference from Broadcast Alley. We'll be right back in just a moment.
ContainerJournal.com is the leading online destination for centralized computing-related content. ContainerJournal.com covers all aspects of software containers, from container management, data management for containers, container security, networking for containers, to the entire container ecosystem, Kubernetes, microservices, serverless, and more. ContainerJournal.com has the largest selection of container-related news, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.containerjournal.com to learn more. ContainerJournal.com is operated by MediaOps Inc., the team behind DevOps.com, Digital Anarchist, SecurityBoulevard.com, DevOps Connect, and DevOpsDozen.com.
All right, back here in the studios, TechStrong TV on the Digital Anarchist Network. Hope you enjoyed that conversation with Michelle Mitchell and myself. I thought it was a good one and worthy to bring up here. I wanted next to do another interview. This one's much more recent, and it was actually with Jim Brennan, Chief Product Officer over at Better Cloud. And as I said again in the show opening, what I really liked about this one was, one of the areas we're focusing in at devops.com is this community we started called IT is Code. And really what it refers to is the IT generalist, the traditional IT person. Their role has changed as much as DevOps has changed testing and security and development and ops itself. Where they used to have to maintain an AD server in a closet, an Exchange server, maybe some other application servers in the network, they're now tasked with taking care of access and control for all of these various SaaS applications that they don't really, they run in the cloud and they have very little control over them. So, it's changed the IT mission, and we call it IT as Code. And the Better Cloud folks came up with a great name. It's called SaaS Ops, SaaS Ops, SaaS Ops. And of course, one of the missions of SaaS Ops and IT as Code is security, right? Traditionally, these IT folks have, much of the time, been on the front line of security. So we had a good talk with Jim about what is SaaS Ops, how it is affecting the IT teams, and what can they do to make their SaaS applications secure, even though everyone's working from home, which I think SaaS helps facilitate that as well. So let's head over now. Here's my conversation with Jim Brennan of Better Cloud.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, it's Alan Schimmel, TechStrong TV on the Digital Anarchist Network. We're joined in this segment by Jim Brennan, Chief Product Officer for Better Cloud. Hey Jim, welcome to TechStrong TV. It's a pleasure. Jim, we're gonna dive into a couple of subjects here today, but being that this is the first time I believe we've introduced our Media Ops audience to Better Cloud, why don't you give us a kind of a quick background on Better Cloud?
Sure, I'm happy to. So Alan, Better Cloud is a platform that helps companies manage and secure the various SaaS applications in their environment. And in fact, that practice of management and security when it comes to SaaS applications, that's what is becoming known as SaaS operations, or even SaaS Ops for short. So you can think of Better Cloud as the world's first SaaS Ops platform.
That's great. I want to dive into what's the platform about here in SaaS Ops. But before we do, let's start with SaaS, right? Certainly, with 90% of the country locked down working from home, we are living on SaaS. But to be fair, we've been living on SaaS for some time already, right? Predominantly. A lot of companies, I know, here at Media Ops, we're not that big. We only have about 20 or so employees, but virtually all of our applications are SaaS-based. Do you have any figures in terms of, at this stage of the game, what percentage of applications that organizations are using are in fact SaaS?
Well, it's going to vary, of course, Alan, in terms of the size of the company, how many employees. Oftentimes we see it also vary in terms of how long the company has been in business. To your point, we've been at this for quite a while now in terms of SaaS being the predominant way of applications being deployed. I think if you go back 8 or 9 years, that's when you started to see things really take hold. That's when Google first came to the scene with what was at the time called Google Apps, which now we know as G Suite. And that's when Better
Right.
Cloud, in fact, came into existence. Certainly in the last several, maybe 2 or 3 years, we've seen an uptick across all makes and sizes of companies. And then to your point, what we've seen in these last 4 weeks, these really extraordinary times, is that those companies who have already embraced SaaS we're typically in a much better position to immediately go to a work from home type of scenario. And those that perhaps maybe had not yet embraced as much SaaS are certainly doing so now in response to the current circumstances.
Absolutely. You know, Jim, I did an interview earlier today with a friend of mine, CTO Robert Reeves at Datical. Database, DevOps, Liquid Base is their an open source project they sponsor. And he was saying, we said the same thing, right? When you need wood, the best time to have planted a tree was about 20 years ago. But the second best time to plant the tree is today. Because if you don't do it today, that's one more day you wasted. And so, you know, companies that were agile, and I don't just mean agile like Agile Manifesto, Scrum Agile. I mean agile like Nimble, and adopting DevOps and some of these other kind of frameworks and methodologies seem to be in a much better posture to deal with a rapid change like this, right? And I think SaaS is a great example of companies who are, you know, just dependent on SaaS, really wherever people can access the SaaS application from, and it's, you know, via the cloud, they're much better situated to handle this kind of situation. Okay, so we've established that. Now, let's, you know, I went to law school, Jim, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, whatever. And so I build my things foundationally. So we've established SaaS. Now let's talk SaaS ops. What do we mean by SaaS ops?
Yeah, and actually for this, Alan, I'm going to go back to the point that you were just making, right? Because what we're seeing now is the benefit to the IT teams within companies of having SaaS deployed or embracing SaaS. But we all know that SaaS really began with a focus on the end user in mind, and how do we make the end users more productive, and how do we allow people to share and collaborate at scale? And that's in many ways what drove the way that applications were developed, and therefore the tools that were developed to allow IT to manage those. And the reality was there was a discrepancy. For many years, most providers of SaaS applications were not spending the majority of their resources building out great admin tools and building out great ways for the IT teams to control and secure these applications. It just wasn't where the focus was.
No.
Right? And SaaS ops has come around really in the last, I'd say the last 2 to 3 years, and it really just got a name in the last 6 months or so. And we had a little something to do with that, but it's been really an organic movement to say, look, IT needs to have a way to continue to deliver that great end user productivity, but not in a way that sacrifices the scalability and the security of the company. They need to have some level of control. And so SaaS ops is just that. It's that focus on allowing IT teams to bring that level of productivity to their employees, but at the same time retain that governance and retain the peace of mind that these new tools that are being rolled out at such a rapid pace are not only the best tools for the companies or for the company employees, but also the right tools for the company in terms of maintaining that security and that governance.
Excellent. So, Jim, you know, we over on DevOps.com, our flagship community site, one of the new communities that we've spun up, and I hope to see it spin up. Well, before all this craziness, it was going to spin up for June. Let's hope we still can. Is a section called IT as Code, right? Because, you know, when we look at things like Scrum Agile and DevOps and Lean IT and cloud, you know, it's had tremendous effects on developers and ops folks, this whole DevOps movement. But it's also had tremendous effect on QA, security. But a lot of people haven't talked about the really tremendous effect it's had just on the IT generalist, if you will, on the IT team, the guys who were responsible for keeping those apps before there was a SaaS, right? But for keeping those apps up locally, when the Exchange server went down, or the AD server went down, or the database, or even the network, and so forth, the advent of SaaS, in some ways, people would say, oh, it made it easy for them because now they don't have to maintain that Exchange server or stuff like that. Nonsense. It made it harder because, as you rightfully pointed out, a lot of these SaaS tools didn't give any thought to the IT administrator on staff for these companies, and how are they going to manage this? There was more than just shutting it off if someone got fired, right? There's more to administering SaaS than that, and so it's been a rough ride for some of these IT folks, and this is the whole concept behind IT as code now, right? We're recognizing these people are part of this digital transformation, and they need to be taken care of. So now we get SaaS Ops. Now let's talk about the Better Cloud SaaS Ops platform.
Sure, yeah. So Better Cloud began life, as I mentioned, over 9 years ago now, and we began life focused exclusively on, at the time, Google Apps, now G Suite. And it was for that exact use case of providing better administration tools to allow those IT teams to better roll out that set of capabilities. And about 4 years ago, we saw this emerging problem or challenge, I would say, of managing and securing across multiple SaaS applications. We saw that challenge increasing, and it was in large part due to what was happening in the market. You had new tools like Slack and Zoom taking hold. You had Microsoft getting in the game with Office 365, and all of a sudden you had these very heterogeneous environments. And so we saw that change, and we pivoted ourselves, and we decided to not just be a single application focused company, but instead to build a new platform focused on this multi-SaaS administration in the form of governance and management. And so essentially 4 years ago, we were a bit ahead of this curve. I would say that it has surpassed even what we thought back then, 4 years ago, in terms of that complexity, because the proliferation of SaaS applications itself has increased. But now companies are rolling them out across more employees, more users, more contractors, all types of third parties. And so those challenges have just exponentially grown. And so our mission, we believe our mission is even further cemented now. And working with our community, we want to establish SaaS Ops, just like DevOps, as the way to tackle these problems. We view where DevOps was focused on building applications for consumers in a more rapid, efficient way. SaaS Ops, in many ways, is focused on your employees as the new consumers, because
Right.
those employees they've got expectations in terms of the applications that you're going to deliver them as their IT team. And so you have to manage the tools in a way that meet those expectations.
But that was traditionally, well, maybe not traditionally, the more enlightened IT teams and CIOs and IT managers always thought that the IT team's mission was to serve its customers, and the customers were the employees of the organization, not necessarily the end users of a business, right? Not the people buying toilet paper at Procter & Gamble, but the employees at Procter & Gamble were the IT team's customers. And so this, though this is now looking at it from the SaaS perspective, that was the right mission all along. And now it's even more so the right mission in today's environment.
It was always the right mission. What I would say, Alan, is that the mission got more complicated. So you think, for example, I'll give you a great example. You've got tools like Box and Dropbox and Google Drive, all these file collaboration tools. You think about the ways within each one of those applications that you as an end user can share out that content. You've got public links, you've got adding collaborators, and the way that you do that varies dramatically from one application to the next. So now essentially you as the end user have been empowered to do all these great things, but the way that you do those things is different from app to app, and the implications for how you do those things is different. So you've been empowered to do things that could now essentially put the company in harm's way in terms of sharing out sensitive data or opening up configurations. And so what happened was that the balance of power shifted essentially from the IT team to those end users, to those employees. So the mission remains to keep them empowered and to keep them productive and to serve them. but that balance of power has shifted in a way where it makes it more difficult for the IT teams to balance those requirements with the other responsibilities they have, which is to keep the business running smoothly and efficiently and securely.
Excellent. Good stuff. And the other, you mentioned securely and security. Again, I had started a security company. I've been in security for about 15 or more, 20 years. And it used to be that security was the responsibility of the security team. Well, now security is everyone's responsibility, obviously. But more and more, security has become a primary driver for the IT person, right? When we talk about how we're going to access and use SaaS, I think security and compliance has to be right up there with just basic access, right, to these things. So it's important. On the other hand, they're not security pros, so you can't expect them to know the finer points of GDPR or the California, new privacy regulations. But they nevertheless have to be able to make sure they're compliant.
That's right. And like you, so I've spent most of my career, about 21 years, in information security, selling to CISOs and security directors. Yep. And you're absolutely right. One of the other things this has done, it's shifted the sort of core of responsibility, if you will, to the IT team. Not that security is still not a separate entity, but the individuals and teams responsible for rolling out those applications, they now bear the responsibility of ensuring that doing so is not introducing any new liabilities into their environments.
Absolutely. But speaking as a security person, Jim, I don't think that's a bad thing that the responsibility for security is being shared, because we see the same thing in DevOps, right, with DevSecOps. And the shifting left, if you will. It's okay to share the responsibility. That doesn't mean we're taking control away from security people. No need to get crazy, but they can. It's not just on them, because security people are too few and far between and valuable today, and they can't be on the front lines of everything. Everyone has to be thinking security.
Completely agree. And it also, besides just load balancing the skills, it just it eliminates any chance of a moral hazard. We're all in this together, and if the team rolling out the application is not thinking about security when they do so, that's not good for anybody. So it really does.
Absolutely.
It creates that security as a shared responsibility mindset, which I agree is a good thing.
Sure. All right, so let's talk a little bit about BetterCloud's go-to-market strategy, if you will, Jim. How are you guys doing it? You've been around a while, as you mentioned, but how are people coming to you, and how what is the go-to-market?
Sure. Yes, we've got a direct sales team, and like most direct sales teams, it's a combination of direct outreach, but then also we have quite a vast marketing effort or set of efforts that are underway at any given time, and we do see a lot of demand come in from those marketing efforts, as well as the awareness of SaaS ops continues to grow, and more importantly, as the awareness of these challenges start to grow, people are actively seeking solutions. Sometimes they don't know quite what to call it, and then they stumble upon SaaS ops, and all of a sudden they tell us, they say, it has a name. This thing that I've been struggling with has a name.
Finally,
I can do something
someone's
about
named it. Yeah.
Yeah, somebody has named it. And so that it's funny that something like that, from the DevOps, that can be comforting when you have something to call it. And so we have a lot of inbound interest as well. And in addition to our sales efforts, we have a services team that can provide best practice guidance and expertise to companies, not only in how to use our tool, but how to think about managing these applications, how to think about the right way to do things like rapid onboarding, which is something that is coming up a lot these days, as we talked about,
Sure.
as companies shift to work from home. So a big part of what we want to do, Alan, is also provide that thought leadership and expertise. And we've managed to build a community over the last several years of about 80,000 members that now can identify themselves as SaaS ops professionals. And so us bringing our thought leadership to them is one part of it, but then also we work to facilitate sharing of expertise among that community, both in the product as well as outside of the product, in various channels that we've set up. We've got a Better IT Slack instance that facilitates that community as one example. And so we take very seriously that responsibility of empowering the community beyond BetterCloud, but just to have success with this new movement of SaaS ops.
Excellent, man. That's encouraging and enlightening. Good stuff. So, I would imagine that the last 4 weeks have been a little bit busy for you guys. Yeah.
Absolutely. As one example, we started doing, we call them open office hours with our services team. So essentially 1 hour free consultations to help our customers make sure they're getting the most value out of the tool as they face some of these new recent challenges.
That's actually a great response to it. Jim, what about beyond? At some point this has to end, right? We will go back to whatever the new normal is. Where do you see SaaS going?
Well, we certainly see in broad terms SaaS adoption only continuing to grow. As we look across the different types of business earlier in response to one of your questions, that behavior in terms of number of apps and usage of apps does depend upon the size of the company and the maturity of the company. We certainly see an acceleration happening in those parts of the market that perhaps would have been laggards or late adopters, because now the emphasis is on it. And so we only see the need growing. One of the things that we expect to continue to become a real challenge, it already is, but especially sort of once we get through these extraordinary times, is the ability to understand what SaaS applications are even running in your environment. We call that discovery. As we get through these times, these IT teams are going to suddenly find themselves in a new normal when it comes to the workplace that they've rolled out after all these rapid deployments. And, not just them, but their employees are rapidly onboarding themselves onto new tools. And so the ability to quickly discover and take inventory of your new workplace is going to be something we see as being very critical in the months to come.
Shadow SaaS.
Shadow IT, shadow SaaS, except now in this new reality, it's not necessarily shadow or malicious. It's just everyone's doing what they think is right.
It's not necessarily malicious. Yeah, and what they think is going to allow them to do their job faster, better, etc. Excellent. Jim, I was derelict in asking you, people who want to get more information, where do they go?
Sure. Well, first I would encourage you to come to bettercloud.com, to our website. You can find a great amount of information there, some tips about how to get started with SaaS ops. And that's a great place to start. And we would love to engage with the broader community and to see how we might be able to help everybody as they enter this new era of SaaS adoption.
Fantastic. All right, Jim, we're about out of time. We're going to take a wrap. But maybe we'll have you back on, and we'd love the IT is Code section on DevOps.com. This would be some really perfect kind of content there. But listen, thanks for joining us. Keep up the great work, and we'll talk to you soon.
Wow, thanks so much for having me, and I would love to come back anytime. Thanks so much.
All right. Jim Brandon, Chief Product Officer for Better Cloud, the first folks who have a SaaS ops platform for helping to manage your SaaS applications. This is Alan Schimmel on TechStrong TV. We'll be right back.
Elsa, you're all over the place.
How am I supposed to do anything when she's over here just doing her own thing?
Okay, well, maybe if Dan played more than just one string, we'd all be more on the same page.
Are you out of your mind? Okay, I do the E string. That's my job.
Isn't there an easier way to do this?
I
There
wish.
has to be.
I literally just suggested
Right?
something. Nobody ever listens to me, though,
It's
so...
ridiculous every time.
When your team's not on the same page, things can get weird, fast. Don't make your DevOps team live like this.
El tutto tu tempo es finito, Dan!
See? It's like we're not speaking the same language. I'm out.
GitLab is the only single application for the entire DevOps lifecycle, making sure your teams are all on the same page.
Do you know how to play the E string?
I can learn.
We are back here now, and it's that time of the show where I'm going to talk about some of the headlines on DevOps.com, Container Journal, and Security Boulevard, of course. Of course, that's not the only news. There's other news going on out there. We'll try to bring it to you when it's relevant. But we focus on these, three sites, and because they're ours. And I hope, but I also want to mention that though I might highlight 4 or 5 or 6 articles. You know, Security Boulevard's publishing 50, 60 articles a day from the Security Bloggers Network. So don't think that that's all we have on there. Go check out what we do have. There's a lot to learn, a lot to keep you abreast of everything. That being said, though, let's jump into a couple of the headlines I wanted to mention. First of all, on Security Boulevard, good article about the DOJ calling for mandatory data breach reporting to law enforcement. Now, look, anytime the government is making it mandatory, especially in today's politically charged climate, to report something, you know, I take a good hard look at should we really do it. But, you know, we've had some mandatory data breach regulations around, geez, more than 10 years now, probably 15 years. And the breach wasn't, the mandatory disclosure of the breach wasn't necessarily to law enforcement, but it was, you were supposed to mandatorily let your customers know that their data was potentially breached, and then you had to offer credit monitoring services and stuff like this. So I don't know what mandatory reporting it to law enforcement is a greater burden or more of a burden than having to disclose it publicly and to your customers as well. And if they can keep that at that same level without requiring more paperwork, red tape, and delays, or some sort of fines or what have you, I'm probably not against it per se. But read the article for yourself, and if you have any comments on that, we'd be really interested to hear it. Head over to the Slack channel, techstrongtv.slack.com. You can get an invite at techstrongtv.com. And I'd love to hear what you think. Do we need another regulation here? Do we need the DOJ mandating this on a federal basis? Another good article up on Security Boulevard is why cybersecurity should be your company's next social good investment. You know, a lot of companies, if they're surviving, are trying to do things for the social good, not only of the company and its employees, but on a broader sense, you know, our society. And you know what? Good cybersecurity and good cybersecurity hygiene is probably one of the best things you could do for that. And for a lot of reasons that the article goes into. Go check it out. And I mean, there's just, you know, now more than ever, there is no excuse. We need to clean up our acts here with what's going on. The last thing you know, when you're fighting for survival or swimming in uncharted waters like this, the last thing you need your organization to do is start dealing with a cybersecurity incident. So please check that out. Next, I want to hop over to Container Journal. You know, we publish only 1 or 2 stories a day on Container Journal, but I do have some news I wanted to report, and that is my friends at Solo.io, and I actually like the company. I met their founder, CEO, open source based company, and she's great, smart, dynamic. Do check it out. They launched a service mesh hub, you know, and it's enterprise-ready support for Istio. So, you know, Istio is a Google, I think it's founded out of the Google folks, but it's the service mesh. It's probably one of the 1 or 2 the leading one, or tied for the leading mesh that, you know, runs on a Kubernetes infrastructure. And they've been doing great stuff with Istio. Now, if you ever get a chance, head over to digitalanarchist.com, and you'll see a few interviews at KubeCon's past where we spoke to the folks at Solo.io. So check that out. Good stuff. It sounds like they've once again moved the ball up. Want to hop over now to DevOps.com. So first of all, the folks at VMware have extended their network virtualization reach. You know, VMware has been, you got to give them credit. They've been working now for a year and a half, really trying to become a player and remain relevant in a DevOps Kubernetes, microservices, enabled world. So please go check that one out. I think you'll enjoy it. Also, two other good articles I wanted to put up for you. 7 effective tips to get the most out of your DevOps. Top tips on how your team can integrate DevOps successfully. We do a lot of these top 5, top 7 stuff. This happens to be one of the better ones. Please go check it out. And again, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, comments on Slack. Go to techstrong.tv, get an invitation, jump over to techstrongtv.slack.com, and tell us what you think, and we'd love to hear about it, your comments and thoughts on it. And then lastly, on DevOps.com, putting customer communications at the core of new apps. So again, we develop these new apps, and it's one thing to do the coding and the CI/CD and all that, but when you're designing these apps, it's so important to remember that at the end of the day, the app's there to serve the customer. And if the communication with the customer within the app is not core, right? That interaction is not core to what you're doing with the app. You got to ask, are you really designing this app to serve your customers? And there are corner cases where communication with the customer may not be core, but for the most part, it is. So that'll wrap up. Of course, that's not all the news and all the articles on here. So please check them. Go check out all the sites if you'd like to see more. But those are some of the highlights. I hope you'll enjoy them. For now, though, we are going to hand things over to our managing editor, Charlene O'Hanlon. Charlene has a great interview with my friend and Steelers fan extraordinaire, Carmen Diardo of TaskTop. So let's head over to Charlene.
Disruption is occurring across every aspect of IT. Open source, cloud services, DevOps, and cloud-native software architectures are democratizing IT and radically transforming how business is done. The old ways of creating software and doing IT are being replaced with agile, flexible, faster, and cheaper methods, benefiting vendors and users alike. Accelerated Strategies Group is out to democratize access of industry expertise and knowledge. We use our expertise and experience to offer insightful, intelligent, useful information in a variety of formats relevant to the IT community, digital events, videos, reports, assessments, workshops, and implementation projects with tech vendors, IT organizations, and business leaders. We widely and openly share our work products, often for free. Analyst reports these days aren't worth more than a graph or chart that tells a story or illustrates a market trend. We work with developers, DevOps teams, cloud architects, security engineers, and transformation leaders most every day, creating and implementing transformational strategies and technologies. We're not just thinkers, we're also doers.
All right, back here in the studio. Charlene, thanks. It's always great to hear from Carmen anyway. He's a really smart guy. Of course, before TaskTop, Carmen was at Nationwide. They were really ahead of their time in their DevOps, adoption, and it's always nice to hear from Carmen. He always has good things to say, intelligent stuff to listen to. But now, speaking of intelligent stuff, let's go over to our analyst corner with Mitchell Ashley, CEO, founder of Accelerated Strategy, speaking with Carol Ross, our leadership coach and founder of EmotionallyFitLeaders.com.
It's Mitch Ashley, CEO with Accelerated Strategies Group, and I'm joined by a longtime colleague and great friend and one of the gurus that when I need help, somebody that I go to, Carol Ross. Carol, great to be talking with you.
Thank you so much, Mitch.
Carol is a leadership coach. She's also founder of EmotionallyFitLeaders.com. So she is someone who invests, works with, and understands, what's involved in being leaders, and how do you equip yourself to be a good leader, as well as understand the followers' needs. Good description, Carol. Maybe you want to provide a little bit more about what you do.
Yeah, thanks, Mitch. I'd say one of the things that I really believe in is that we have to be aware and cognizant and managing our emotions to be a good leader. And that's something that not everyone pays attention to. And it has huge impact on you as a leader in terms of your own creativity and productivity, as well as the impact on your staff, your employees, your team. So I really do believe that it starts from the inside out, and emotions are part of that inside part that people don't really understand well and don't have the tools to actually manage well.
Yeah, they don't send you through emotions management class as part of being a leader, do they? Matter of fact, they say, you know, suck it up, cupcake, get up there and get it done, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think that leaders are kind of taught to hold in their emotions. And I think they're all aware, many are so aware that emotions are contagious. So whatever they project out is going to kind of spread through the ranks. But holding it in is not a sustainable long-term strategy.
Nope. And every effort to do that is probably misguided anyway, because everybody can read it. They know it, right? Well, let's talk about, you know, these are some challenging times. These are just to be just yourself, not only being a leader, but how can you lead people through such a challenging, unknown, uncharted, you know, you don't know if you're dealing with, you know, prehistoric sharks or great white sharks, but you know, there's a lot of danger out there, mostly unknown.
Yeah. I was reading in the Wall Street Journal this weekend where they had interviewed a lot of different leaders and what they were thinking during the month of March. And as this pandemic was unfolding, all the scenario planning that they had done just kind of went out the window because they'd never seen this before.
Well, yeah.
Right. So, and you know, even they describe certain leaders who had kind of started to try to get a feel from the field what was happening, and even like touching into, you know, personal contacts who were epidemiologists at Johns Hopkins. And even then, they still couldn't predict what was going to happen 2 weeks out. So, so under those circumstances, the things that we think we can count on, we can't count on anymore. And, you know, they talked about CEOs like, you know, cashing in lines of credit and, you know, hoarding cash and thinking like, okay, I think we can get through the next 3 weeks. Well, what about the next 3 months? So that one of the things that struck me was that in any of these situations, if you actually are not centered and grounded, you can't make good decisions because the world's kind of swirling around you at that point, right? And it's going to be swirling around for a while. So self-care is like number one priority. Self-care can mean you're getting more sleep than you normally do. It can mean if you meditate, doubling down on your meditation time. It can mean taking more time out to connect with loved ones and family to fill you up. All of those things are important during this time. And it's also setting an example for the rest of your company. That if you take time to take care of yourself, you also know it's important for others. There's something else here too, which is self-compassion. You know, leaders can be really hard on themselves, thinking that they actually, you know, have to have all the answers. And no one has.
I've never been guilty of that, but I understand some leaders have that challenge.
Yeah. And so, you know, at this time, no one has the answers, really. And so to give yourself some forgiveness for mistakes that you might be making, decisions that you wish you had made that you hadn't made, even cases where you weren't as kind because you were under so much pressure.
Yeah, that tension, stress, can release underlying anger, other emotions that are there, and you don't intend to or don't even realize that you're coming across that way.
Yeah.
And it seems like, we're taught to handle it, the suck it up cupcake idea, right?
Yeah.
And so much of that is you're not really handling it, even if you think you are. And it's very apparent to others as well as it should be to yourself until something bursts, and then
That's right.
you're like, that's not me. That's not. And it seems like that's particularly challenging now when it's almost like there is no rule book. Yes, you want to go worry about liquidity, but how long, right? You need to, is business still being transacted? My supply chain is wiped out, or they're all gone anyway. And you have no idea what's coming back and how soon. So it seems like every parameter of, other than yourself and your family, and sometimes that can even be in question with someone getting ill.
Yeah. I want to point us to some research that was done by the Gallup organization, the same people who do Gallup polling. They came out with a book, maybe about 10 years ago, called Strengths-Based Leadership. Strengths-Based Leadership. And in it, they talked about a study they did around followers. They wanted to know, what does good leadership look like from the perspective of what followers need?
Mm-hmm.
So they interviewed, Gallup does exhaustive research, but they interviewed lots and lots of people. What is it that you need as a follower from your leaders? They boiled it down to 4 things. The first one is something that everyone knows around leadership. It's trust. You have to be able to create trust. The second one is hope. So people need to be hopeful in what they're trying to accomplish in the company. The third one is safety. Actually, no, it's stability. It's stability.
Yep.
And so, in these times, stability is not outside, it's internally.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then the last one is compassion. They need to know that their leaders care. So if you look at those 4 things, trust, hope, stability, and compassion, they start from the inside out. And yes, you can do some actions that you think might create trust, but in the end, people trust you because they know you.
Mm-hmm.
They can see who you are. It's part of your being that you're trustworthy. And that also means knowing yourself well enough to be trustworthy with yourself. Now, what do I mean by being trustworthy with yourself? You talked about how under stress, people will start to have these behaviors that are like, that's not me. That's usually not me, but I'm under stress. Mm-hmm. Being trustworthy is knowing those parts of you that are usually not me, but now it's coming out, and it's coming out in a big time.
And what to do about it, right?
And what to do about it.
In a healthy way.
That's right. So being trustworthy is knowing those parts of you. It's kind of like we all have, I would say, quote, dark parts of us. But the trustworthy people know those dark parts. They know how to actually manage those dark parts. The people who are not trustworthy just like let it fly, let it rip, right? And then there's like this huge wake, of destruction afterward.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's what I mean by trustworthy is it's knowing those parts of you well enough to manage them when you're under stress and you could get those triggers.
Let me ask you, if you haven't built trust with people, is a situation like this is now the time to start, or is it, there's never any time better than the present, no matter what the situation?
Yeah, it's the latter. Like, if you haven't started now, start now.
Yeah. If you didn't have a reason to, now you've got a really good one.
Well, and this is a time when vulnerability counts. We all need to have permission to be vulnerable, because we're all dealing with so much more than anyone even knows from the outside.
Mm-hmm.
So to be able to be vulnerable and say, you know what, I'm struggling too. I don't have all the answers. I I have anxiety at night. Now, you don't want to make people fearful or panicked, but to say in an authentic way, I am human too, and I have these same feelings that you're feeling, is actually reassuring.
It's about showing your humanity. That's the vulnerability in it.
That's right. That's right. And I'm going to say that makes you more trustworthy. Because the guy that is, says they're strong and like, yeah, I'm fine. I don't think I can trust that person because I'm like, no, I don't think so.
You're fine. But, well, let's talk about hope.
Yeah.
So this is, talk about so much unknown of what could happen, and some of the things that could happen could be really bad, could be life-threatening, could be, ruin in terms of financial. If you think about all the downsides, the negatives.
Yeah.
How do you build hope in that kind of a situation, both for yourself and the people that are with you?
Yeah. So, people pick up on false hope. And so the first thing is you actually have to be hopeful, genuinely hopeful for the future. And that means being able to see, this may sound really paradoxical for some people, but being able to see the gift of these times. If you can't actually see the gift of this radical shift in how we work, how we live, how we do business, if you can't see the gift of that, then you're not going to be able to see a better future. And that's where hope comes from, is the ability to see a better future. So hope has to start with you internally first, before you can give hope to anyone else.
And if you as a leader don't have hope, how do you start? Where do you begin to build that for yourself? Or is that a much longer, 6-series podcast you have to listen to?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is you actually let yourself sit with the feeling of hopelessness, right? By definition, if you have no hope, you are hopeless. And if you push away that feeling, that emotion, it doesn't make things any better. If you allow yourself to actually get still and feel that feeling of hopelessness, and people resist this at all costs, right? But just, I'm going to say, set a timer on your phone, get in a quiet place, and allow yourself to sink into the feeling of hopelessness for, say, 30 seconds. Because what happens, this is really a kind of almost a mystical thing, is if you're in hopelessness long enough, true hopelessness, feeling it, hope will emerge out of hopelessness. I've done this with clients before where they're like, I don't think this is going to work. I'm like, trust me, let's just give it 2 minutes of hopelessness. And hope does start to emerge.
It's almost like it creates space for hope by expressing that hopelessness, even if it gets to despair or whatever other emotions.
Yeah, but people are so scared of that place because they think, oh, this is so vulnerable. I don't want to be powerless, right? But it's like, no, you surrender into the powerlessness. You surrender into the despair, the hopelessness. And I'm going to say for 2 minutes, then you can go back to, pushing it away.
Now what do I do? It really does. I mean, I've used that technique. You've taught it to me, actually. It does create space versus the energy you use to manage the hopelessness.
That's right.
It's there, which takes away from you focusing on other things of what is hopeful.
Yeah, that's right. So, once you can get to that place of, oh, wait, there is some hope. There is a vision of a better future. And I don't even care what kind of better future you're talking about. It could be a personal better future. That will emanate from you and people will pick up on it. They will feel your hopefulness.
You don't have to say you're hopeful. It's
no.
You bring it to the conversation.
Yeah, it's how you're being. Yeah.
I got the burgers. I went to Bun Barn, Beef Patty Palace, Tomato Town.
Oh, thanks for getting all this, honey.
Yeah, no problem. Getting all of it just took about 2 hours.
I just wish there was an easier way to get all your burger fixings from one place,
Well,
Dad, you didn't go to Mayo King?
You know our car doesn't fit in their drive-through. I went to Mustard Chef.
I hate this burger. He also went to ketchup.
When you're building something using components that don't work together easily, things could get ugly, fast. You wouldn't live like this, so don't make your DevOps team live like this.
This lack of burger cohesion is hard on all of us, Cheryl.
GitLab is the only single application for the entire DevOps lifecycle.
Let's talk a little bit about stability, because stability is one of those where it's like, where do you find stability now?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, where do you find it now? And I guess you didn't have it when you thought you had it.
That's right.
So that was a lie, if you will.
Right.
That stability I thought I had.
Yeah, if you thought money in the bank was stability, well, think again. Right. So stability comes from your own ability to stay in well-being. Now, well-being is an emotion, and it's one of the emotions that is really underrated, because when you're in well-being, it means that you're not in fear, you're not in worry, you're not in anxiety, you're not in confusion. Well-being is, I am content with exactly where I am.
Mm-hmm.
And again, people will pick that up. If you're not panicked, if you're not in fear, if you're not worried. Now, it doesn't mean that you're not paying attention. It doesn't mean that you're not focused on what's happening. It actually means you're very present to the moment.
Yeah, it's not whitewashing what's there to pretend nothing matters. It's,
No.
I'm okay where I'm at. This is a good place to be.
Yeah, it's acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that when we resist, when we don't accept what is, that creates bad behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
And that creates instability.
Mm-hmm.
So the role of a leader as someone who provides stability means that you have stability first. And you can manage your emotions in a way that allows people to relax. Like tension and stress is counterproductive. But if you can get to that place where you know you're okay, no matter what happens, that's stability. That's stability, and people pick up on it.
So from the follower's need, from stability standpoint, is obviously the situation isn't stable.
That's right.
So stability doesn't mean the situation is stability.
No.
Is it a path forward? Is it the sense that the person I'm following, my leader, the team, whatever it is has some potential positive outcome that I don't know yet? What is it for the follower, if you will, that creates that stability when everything is unstable?
For the follower, it's, I see who you are, and I know that you're not going to change. You're not going to change in terms of flying off the handle. You're not going to change in terms of panicking. Who you are at your core is unchanging, and I can count on that. I can count on that from you as a leader.
Mm-hmm.
It's also from the followers, perspective. Stability is that we will always find a way forward. That I trust that we will always find a way forward. It may not be pretty, it may be messy, but there is enough trust and good intention and assets that we will find a way forward. So, and in some sense, these are all intertwined, aren't they?
Mm-hmm. Very
Now,
much so.
I have more stability when I have hope and trust. hope in the future, trust in the people around me. So stability is one of those things that in this time, we can no longer look at the form or the circumstance to provide stability. We have to look at what I call the function or the essence underneath, the essence of Mitch, right? The essence of our team relationships. That's where stability comes from. And I'm going to say the essence of my beliefs, my attitudes, my feelings, my thoughts that I control. That's where stability comes from.
It's true. I mean, the thing you really have control over under any circumstance is yourself, right?
Yep.
Not the circumstances.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So, and we've been so trained to look at the circumstances to provide us stability. I go to work at this place every day. You know, I get a paycheck. We have these weekly meetings. That's all circumstance.
Hey, people in the 52 percentile, they'll be happy, or whatever you make up about.
Yep.
People's needs are, right?
Yep. Yep. That's right. So, and the last follower's need is compassion, which at this time, I like to say that it's easy to have compassion for people you know and like. And it's also easy to have compassion when you can see everyone is suffering, right? So for everyone who thinks that compassion is one of those two things, like, oh, I can see everyone suffering, I can have compassion, or yes, I can have compassion for people I know and like. That's not compassion. So, you know, compassion is, the definition of compassion is caring born of sorrow. Caring born of sorrow. And when we can actually see someone as a human being, that's when compassion, true compassion, can really kick in. I care about you as a human being. I may not like you day to day, but I can see you as a human being. I can see your suffering. I can see your wounds. And therefore, I have some caring about you. That's compassion. So I like to say, like, compassion is not selective. It's like, it's either like you have compassion for everyone because they are human beings, or you don't have compassion at all.
So compassion isn't asking how you're doing.
No. No.
Compassion isn't feeling bad because something's going on.
No.
It's not empathy, not to be mistaken with empathy.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, here's how I think of this. It's, you know, oftentimes sympathy, empathy, and compassion get kind of all compressed, right? Sympathy is like, oh, I can understand why you would be feeling this way. You know, you just got hit by a truck. Oh, I can understand, right? Empathy is, oh, I'm feeling it. I feel what it feels like when you got, you know, when you get thrown under the bus, for example. Right? And compassion is actually not just I can understand it and I can feel it, but I want to do something to relieve your suffering. That's the difference.
Interesting.
That's the difference.
Well, I suspect, probably doesn't, you know, maybe it's Captain Obvious prediction here, but I suspect the turmoil is not going to stop. The change and what's going to happen in the new normal, that journey, however long it is, whether it's days, weeks, or months, you know, we're somewhere in the thick of this change. So what are the things that you can suggest to leaders to go back to? So when the apple cart gets upset for the 25th time this week, and you're trying to look like you're holding it together and you're not, what's the place that brings you back to where you can make sure you're in a good place so you can be a good place for others?
Yeah. The first thing is to build resets into your day. So a reset is in the middle of the day, I go take a walk for 10 minutes. Or if you meditate, I meditate for 5 minutes. Or it might be, I just turn off the lights in my home office. I close my eyes and I get still. And I take 5 deep breaths.
Mm-hmm.
It could be any of those things. But what you want to do is slow down your mind enough so that you can see and hear more clearly because you're present. Our minds work so quickly, especially in this kind of fast moving environment, right? And so we can be so much in the future or the past that we're actually not present. So the first thing is to build a reset into your day. And I often say to clients, do you take lunch? Yes, I take lunch. Okay, well, just add in 5 minutes, add in 10 minutes to that time. It's a good time to do a reset.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is to, I hate to say this, but because I know leaders are ambitious and they are high achieving, and I'm going to say lower your ambitions right now. Lower your expectations of yourself and others, because it does no good to keep whipping the horse
Mm-hmm.
when the horse has no more to give.
Well, ambitions for yourself and maybe expectations for others.
That's right.
It's okay if that vacuum goes off in the middle of the office meeting because we're all inviting each other into each other's homes, right? It's okay to have one of the kids sitting next to you working on a drawing project or putting Legos together and they spill over. Yeah, that's where we are. It's the place.
Yeah. It's such an interesting time because now we see everyone's working from home. Life is crowding in to what we consider work. And we have to allow for that because people are trying to live their lives, right? They're worried about can I get groceries? They're worried about my internet is going on and off, so if we don't allow for those for the totality of life coming into the workplace, we're going to create our own suffering.
Mm-hmm.
We'll create our own suffering. So
when you create a safe space or you don't, right?
That's right. Yeah. So lower your expectations. And then I would say the other thing is to connect. We don't often think about the opportunity to connect deeply on a daily basis. It fuels us when we're able to connect deeply.
Mm-hmm.
And it might be, there's all kinds of advice on how to do this remotely, right? So I'm not going to go into that, but I'll just underscore that it's really important to stay connected and not be isolated during this time. So I would, maybe it's reaching out to some past mentors.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Maybe it's reaching out to some colleagues from 3 jobs ago. Maybe it's reaching out to some advisors who you don't really know that well, but you'd like to get to know better. And it's reaching out to your team, of course. That's, that's kind of an obvious one. But we're so much better together than alone.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not the time to isolate.
Well, and connecting is not checking in. Connecting is a personal connection. It's the human connection.
That's right.
Understanding what's happening.
Yeah.
May not be talking about work at all. Maybe just talking about other stuff at sometimes, which sounds very antithetical to getting stuff done in the work environment. But you're not going to create that connection, that compassion.
That's right.
You talked about without it.
Yeah. The last thing I would say is to start to log your emotions on a daily basis. And so if you go to my site, emotionallyfitleaders.com, there's a free download there called the Emotional Fitness Toolkit. and you'll see in there a map of emotions and how to use that map. But just the identification of your emotions more specifically than just I'm stressed out. There's research that says it has health benefits. If I can say, oh, I felt hurt today, or I felt sadness, that just the identification, not even feeling the feeling, has health benefits. So I would say become more aware of your emotions by logging them daily and using a specific set of emotions that you can point to.
I think it's going to create a lot of well-being too by doing that.
Right. That's right. Yep.
Well, thanks, Carol. You mentioned your website, emotionallyfitleaders.com, correct? Great. And I know that you coach coaches. It's kind of your primary business. Can you recommend coaches if someone wants to reach out and is looking for some help?
Absolutely. I have a team of coaches that I'm working with that have been trained in how I do the work around emotionally fit leaders. And so we're doing work around resiliency with leaders and also resiliency circles for organizations. How do you actually create this place of hope and stability and compassion and trust in a virtual space for up to 30 people in less than an hour?
Well, fantastic.
Yeah.
I always say you do God's work, whether you're religious or not. A greater being, you do greater beings work.
I appreciate that so much, Mitch.
Well, thanks. This has been a great conversation, and I feel like there's unlimited number of tools, nuggets to pick up from this conversation. So I hope it's been really beneficial to our audience too.
Thank you.
Great.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
Hey, thanks, Mitchell. You know what? Mitchell's really been doing some amazing interviews and Analyst Corner segments on TechStrong TV. If you've missed any of them, please go check them out. Every single one has just been superb. Anyway, speaking of superb, let's now head over to the King of Channels, Mike Vizard, for his channel roundup.
Hey, thanks, Alan. So the good news is there's more funding, allegedly, coming down the pike. Folks in Congress and the president seem to be coming together on the idea that we don't have enough stimulus and we're going to need some more. Now, I don't really know what the total number is going to be, but it's going to be more than $2 trillion and probably less than $5 trillion in total. Of course, we haven't seen much of the money actually flow through the system yet, but it's coming. The question is, for all the folks in the channel, is this going to be more of a V-shaped event where we have a sharp decline and then there's going to be a sharp uptake? Is it going to be more like a U event where there'll be a sharp decline and we'll bounce along the bottom for a while before there is an uptake? Or is it going to be a W where we'll see a decline, a rise, a decline, and a rise? Depending on your level of pessimism, you can pick one of those three letters. But if anybody tells you that they know for sure what's going to happen, chances are they're lying. That said, there are interesting opportunities out there. HPE is showing off some new virtual desktop bundles. You get a server that you can either have on extremely good terms, or you can even just rent it, or you can even deploy it on their managed service. And it comes loaded with VDI software from either Citrix or VMware. The idea is that organizations post this crisis are going to want to centralize the management of desktops. And in a lot of cases, that'll be in the cloud. But there's plenty of regulated industries where that's a no-go. So HP is betting that you're going to see a lot more people moving desktops onto servers, and that'll create an interesting opportunity for the channel partners. Of course, every time there's a crisis, there's a lot of movement. And so partners, especially MSPs, should be keeping a close eye on what Canonical is doing. The providers of the Ubuntu operating system are also providers of a distribution of Kubernetes. And they just launched a series of managed services where they're going to deliver the entire stack, essentially, that sits on top of Kubernetes. So they'll manage the databases, a lot of the middleware, and including the monitoring software. This isn't a net new idea. Mirantis has something similar, and we're also seeing VMware do that with commercial software. The challenge for partners is a lot of the vendors are now delivering full boat managed services. In fact, people who resell those services are calling themselves managed services. So the definition of who's a managed service provider and what they are is getting a little fuzzy, to say the least. Those who provide their own managed services from the full stack are going to have to figure out, where does it make sense for them to resell a managed service? Where does it make sense for them to build their own? And how do they add value? This conversation's been coming to a head now for several months, but honestly, it's here in spades. Other things to look at that are essentially full boat managed services, as well as the emergence of these turnkey software-defined wide area networks. Cato Networks picked up $77 million to continue the funding of one of these. There's another company called Perimeter 81. Basically, instead of relying on a VPN, these are cloud services where you can plug in, a lot of times just with a simple URL link, and you become part of this larger global network that mainly sits on POPs all around the world. And you can access any wide area network service you want. That's a lot easier to deal with than trying to put VPN client software on every little thing that's out there. But it's another example of how the world is changing, and I think these services are going to become really popular real soon. Meanwhile, security continues to be a huge opportunity. All these endpoints at home is just resulting in more attacks coming from botnets and everywhere else in the world. Interestingly enough, ConnectWise is providing some timely security training to partners who are interested. So if you don't have a security practice today, it's something to think about. Also, SonicWall has changed a lot of the terms on its managed services security practice. So things are a little more profitable for the partners. They get a lot more support. Of course, it's a slightly bigger commitment to SonicWall that's required, but that's okay in these times perhaps, because at the very least, SonicWall as yet is not out there selling a managed service directly against their partners. Other interesting security events is Untangled extended their partnership with Webroot. The idea is that the control plane that you use to manage your firewall can now also be used to manage the endpoint. This is interesting because it lowers the total cost of delivering security. I think that's going to be a big theme going forward. People want more security, but they want it at a lower cost. And with that in mind, I'd also give a shout out to one other thing. Aqua Security has pointed out that there's a boatload of attacks now aimed at Docker APIs. For those of you who have not been following containers, people are taking container software and using it to encapsulate their entire legacy application and then move that thing into the cloud, which of course winds up exposing a boatload of Docker APIs. Of course, there's people building cloud native applications as well. The bad guys have figured out that a lot of these APIs are not locked down and they're starting to target them. That creates an opportunity, of course, for partners to thwart them. All right, guys, with that in mind, good luck, stay safe, and good selling.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
Thanks very much, Mike. That was another great channel roundup. And you know what? With that, I think we're going to round up this episode of TechStrong TV for Thursday, April 9th. I hope you enjoyed our show today. We will be back tomorrow to wrap the week up on Friday. Until then, this is Alan Schimmel for TechStrong TV on the Digital Anarchist Network. Have a great day and be safe, everyone.